Hey everybody, I am Cinnamon Cooney, your Art Sherpa, and today I'm going to actually show you step by step with all the techniques, all the color mixes, how you can paint at home this amazing surf scene. So whether you're here for Acrylic April, a 30 painting program, teaching you to paint water and landscape better, or whether you came by because you have a surfer in your life or you are a surfer and you wanted to paint this wonderful wave painting, I'm going to show you in everything, in every way I can, how you create this yourself at home. On the mic is my husband, John.
Hello.
He helps me do that by making sure that whenever I'm explaining a technique or a color mix or a process, he's like aiming the camera right at it.
I try.
That's his job. He's really good at it. So you can see what I'm talking about. That way you're not having to imagine it past the point of you imagining the painting. If you check the description below, there's a link to the Art Sherpa website where there is a written out step-by-step mini book for this lesson. There is a traceable if you're not confident for drawing. There is a grid if you are ready to draw a little bit, but you just kind of need to know where things are. So whatever you need as a new artist, we have those resources for you, and they are free. So the lesson is free, and the book, mini book is free, and the traceable is free. It's all free. All you've got to do is bring a little optimism, your paint and your brushes, and come back and meet me at the easel right now. I am going to show you how to paint this. On today's painting, I'm going to be using an 8x8 surface. I have the wish or intention that I've written on it in watercolor pencil for you guys, which is that I hope you catch the perfect wave in your painting, the metaphorical wave, you know, a beautiful surf into art beach. I got lots of metaphors all day. The acrylic colors that I have out today are tiny amount of dioxazine purple, ultramarine blue, phthalo green, phthalo blue, burnt sienna, cad red medium, cad yellow medium, Mars black, and titanium white. I also am going to be using the golden fluid acrylic today to do some splatter, and I may be using a splattering tool. I have a whole video on how to splatter a lot of different ways, so don't let this be the worrisome part of the painting for you. There's just a lot of ways to do this that totally work. Really, if you know what I wish for you and you know what art supplies we're going to be using and you know what we're going to be painting, there's really only one thing left to do for you, which is to totally grab your paint and your brushes and come back and meet me at the easel right now, because I'd like to show you how we're going to paint this. On this surface, one of the first things that we want to do as artists is find or orient or map out our canvas. We talked about this a lot. If you're doing Acrylic April with me this year, we've talked about this, but just in case you've come in because you thought, I really want to paint somebody who surfs, and this is a standalone lesson, I'm going to take a tool. This is a watercolor pencil, and I'm going to measure the halfway point up and down in my canvas. So 4 inches by 4 inches, right? Because it's a 8x8. So this is our halfway point. I'm going to make just a little bit of a line here, which will go away in a second. Really, right about here down is our wave. And the point between the halfway point of our canvas and the top of our canvas, about halfway between those two lines, is our horizon. And we want to set that there so that when we put our surfer in, we have good scale for his body to come up over the horizon line just a little bit. Once I kind of know where things are on my canvas, and I'm going to use this again when I put the surfer in, I can paint in a kind of underpainting for the sky and for the water below. So let's get a brush. Let's pick a fairly large one so we don't spend a lot of time, you know, filling in the area with a teeny tiny brush. It's like if I took a teeny tiny brush, like one this size, I would be painting for a while. So I'm going to get one that's about 1 inch across. It's a number 26 bright. You're going to dip this in water. We're going to go ahead and add a little white to our brush and work it in. You'll notice that I'm kind of going back and forth with this. Now over here, I have ultramarine blue and I have phthalo blue, and I'm going to mix them together kind of 1 to 1.
Okay.
And that is, so then I get kind of a mid-range blue. A nice way to get a mid-range blue, not too aqua or turquoise and not too red biased as the ultramarine goes. Now I do want to make sure that my horizon line stays level, and I will probably come back on the next step or so to make sure it's super duper level. But right now we're going to just generally paint it in level. So we have that in. That looks pretty good.
Yep.
Rinse this out. Now, from here to about just a little bit past the halfway point, I'm going to take my ultramarine blue and my phthalo green, and they make a deep teal. See that deep teal?
Mm-hmm.
Ultramarine blue and phthalo green is a teal. Phthalo blue and phthalo green is more of a turquoise. That's why I play those two colors sort of off of each other. They do some interesting things. They look really close, like they're the same color on the palette, but they are not. Oops.
This is the layer of the wave that the shark lives in.
Are you? Oh, if you're part of our emoji club, go ahead and throw up your shark. Actually, game. Anytime John says shark, throw up a shark emoji on him. In any video going forward, I'm never going to let it go. If we paint water and he brings up shark emoji on John's face. Right? So whether you're in our emoji club or you're using regular emojis, there's sharks emojis in both. So nobody gets left out. And I feel like we should constantly tease John about his unrelenting fear of sharks.
And it's not fear. It's an informed awareness. And if you don't agree with me.
Sometime we're going to have a marine biologist that's going to be like, you need to stop bad-mouthing sharks.
Well, I tell you what. Just next time you want to fear factor yourself, just go Google aerial footage of surfers. Recent. Sort by recent.
I like that he's helping you use Google better. Sort by recent, because that's the only relevant information that we have. It's got to be recent. So from here to the bottom, we're going to get more into our light turquoise mix while my husband is being very silly about his shark fears. I'll get a little water into this. And you can kind of see how it's definitely more turquoise. And this is when you really see the differences between these two colors. And I'm going to bring this down. This is really an underpainting. This just puts the values of the structures or objects that we're painting onto the surface and really allows us to do this. All right. Okay. That is fantastic. Now, before we want to go on, we're going to want to dry this.
Okay.
And then we're going to come back and add the next layer. So for this next part, we're going to add the sky. The sky is a pretty easy sky today. Not a lot of clouds in it, not a lot of stuff going on. And I did that because I chose that because I didn't want to have that and this very complicated wave happening to you guys. I'm going to come in and get to my kind of muted blue, a little more muted. And I will paint this sky. Another layer. I want to make sure that I keep the horizon line level, which is why sometimes I turn my canvas to improve my orientation to it. I'm going to continue to take my blue and ultramarine mix. They do such a nice mix together. And they make a bright sky that's very distinctly and familiar in its blueness. I'm going to make sure that I come around the edges of that so that it has a good bend around. Here we go. That's a really terrific sky. And then from here to the middle point of the painting, we have the ocean. We can actually go forward because we're going to use some similar kind of techniques. I might get a little of my blue and blue together again. And I'm going to make some rough horizontal strokes, brushing them across. If you've never, ever painted before, you may want to watch some of my prep videos for new artists to help you with the common troubles that you might be running into. And if you weren't aware, this is part of a 30 painting program about painting landscape and water. So you may find that particularly helpful. continue to come forward with my blue and blue. And I'm making little marks. I'm going to make sure that what the wave is in front of
Sharks.
has a nice value change too.
It's in front of the sharks.
Well, the sharks are perfectly capable of surfing, so.
They're in there.
For all you know, the shark is right below the surfer.
I know they are.
Could also be dolphin. It's as likely. Probably more likely to be dolphin.
Yeah, but.
Now you can get a little of the blue and green here. Just kind of also brush that through. Horizontal marks. Be very, very nice.
It's interesting. Just because it's more likely to be a porpoise doesn't mean that it won't be a shark.
It's true. Now I'm taking a little bit of my white. And while this is still wet, I'm going to very lightly dust across the surface of the canvas, creating some dimensionality. Not a lot, but just a little. Mm-hmm. You want some just unevenness. Because water is mirror, and so it's going to have a little bit of character in it. And you definitely want to make sure this goes down far enough for your wave to have lots of room to have a curl. Mm-hmm. All right. That's all you've got to do to that point. And once again, let's dry. And when we return, we'll put in the next part of the painting with no shark. So we can eyeball the positioning of our wave pretty easily because it kind of almost comes across the surface, not in a completely straight line, but a straight-ish line. There's a bit of a curve down. Mm. You know that you're going to want to have the wave fold over perhaps here. This kind of comes up. And that's the reason that the wave comes up like this is the board has just curled through the wave and is jumping up. And so the track of that would be present to our eye.
Right.
So if we have this in the right positioning, and I'm going to look at it with a measurement because if I have it too low, I want to move it up. So I might have it a little bit too low. Because 4 inches is the halfway point. I may actually want to move the whole structure up. So if you see that 4 inches was the halfway point on this, mm-hmm. I took this down to like 4.5 inches from the top. You can always use the grid reference whenever you're trying to get a sense of whether something is where it's placed in the surface or not. Now I also have a board coming across here. Put a little line in there to create an angle. His little board is like definitely happening there. So make the little lawn dart that is his board. If you don't want to draw, we have it traceable, which you would just transfer the image onto the canvas at this stage to get these lines in. Now he's coming here. He's got some very interesting body positioning because his hand kind of comes off the board, angles in, and then we have some shoulders that are right here. Put in some little knobs to say shoulders. And we have a little bit of a head kind of coming forward off of the shoulders. Interesting to look at. And then we've got a bit of a hand coming off that side. So it's a really dynamic pose
it really
that our
is.
surfer's in. He's not, in a level or straight across to us pose. Come here, and he's got a little foot kind of coming off there. We do see some of his knee and some of his foot. That's really going to be in foreshortened perspective. And a lot of this will be in the wave. So we have to know where those objects are to really go further into the painting. You want to kind of think about like how much of his trunk shows and where do they show. You'll be fascinated to know how little of him shows in position to you. So we're really going to be just painting values and skin tones with highlights. And if we get that correct, what we'll have is what will look like a surfer to our eye. With luck. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if we posted it, I must have felt like it came out because it's on the channel. So if you're seeing me say this now, through the magic of time machines, it will have worked out. I will see you when we come back and we'll start painting some. So I'm going to rough in some of what I have going on here. That way I have a place to start from. I'm going to take my cad yellow over to my Mars black. They kind of make a green. So green gray. And I'm going to begin to put in this surfboard with this color. I don't want to completely lose all of my guiding lines, but there's almost no way sometimes for me to not lose some of it through the painting process. I can always put them back if I need them, or I can try to paint them back in, which is what I'm going to try and do. I'm using a gray that has a slight yellow bias to it. We will take the board all the way to white. You think how these used to be shaped just a few decades ago versus the amazing engineering that is in boards now.
Yeah.
You know, it's really extraordinary how far we have come.
It really is.
And that's got to dry for a minute, and I can dry it with a hair dryer, or I can find another thing on my painting to paint while this is having a dry. And one thing I can start to paint is the upfront area before my wave. It's kind of a fun thing to want to paint. I'm going to take a little of my phthalo turquoise, which is my phthalo green and phthalo blue. And I'm going to begin to kind of brush this up this way because this is the directionality that the wave is giving us. The water is being pulled at a slight angle. You can see that by looking at the wave. And where the water is level to our eye, it's still getting some pulling up. So that's an interesting balance to need to work out. You can kind of see I'm balancing between the horizontal and the vertical going strokes. Now, interestingly enough, I'm going to load up a little bit of my ultramarine and a little bit of my Doc's purple, and such a little bit. It's not a huge amount.
Oh, that's nice.
It will be easier. There's so much seafoam and reflection happening here that it'll be easier to put back a little bit of the blue-green peeking through after this is dry. I know that I'm going to come back and add little bits of water peeking through. I know that that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course. Make sure that I capture the angle of the strokes. More of an angle over here towards the right. And then here I can always kind of brush on the edge of my brush, sort of blend these two spaces into each other. Can rinse out a good bit. The top of this wave is such a seafoam green. It just can't even. So seafoam green, it's even hard to like imagine that it is a seafoam green as it is. So I'm going to add yellow to my phthalo turquoise and a lot of white to achieve that green.
Seafoam green is one of those great colors.
Oh, I know. It's just one of those colors that when you love it so much. Come to the top here. We'll definitely have to put some shading in here. I'll bring some of this color arcing over, where we know it's sort of showing through the roll over of the wave before the foam gets involved, as foam is wont to do. Add a little bit of shadow. These are just little adjustments as we're going through. And add a darker color. Can even come over into my ultramarine. as I'm coming across the wave because they have shadows where the water is thick.
Ah.
So we're just kind of blocking in some basic value of the wave. Not only the hue it is, the color that it is, but also the light dark of it.
Mm-hmm.
I can just feather that through. And I have lots of shadows and things to add. So really this is just about getting these initial values in. Greener than that.
This is sort of the underpainting of the wave.
This is a bit of the underpainting of the wave. We're really starting to talk about how the nature of this blue is different than the blues behind it. I haven't added any foam. I'm just making the beginnings. And I can feather my brush here at the edge to help kind of push that transitional space. Just the beginning, just the thought. You can start to see where we've got some different things going on. And I can come back here. If this is dry now, I can take my number 4, come back into that gray. Come in and start to paint the board.
Oh, give it some of that shading.
Yeah, give it some texture, some shading, some personality. If you're painting this as a gift for a surfer that you know,
Mm-hmm.
a good thing, because boards are very different and surfers have such strong board preferences, a good way to customize it besides changing the figure to look a little bit more like the person maybe you're painting, right? Because you could change hair color, skin color, any of those things, put on shorts that you know they wear. You can do that stuff to make it more personal to them. But one of the things that you could do is, I'm going to grab some brown here. You could look at their board very carefully and make sure that you do its markings and its shape.
Oh.
Right. And that will also help, the person that maybe you're gifting this to perceive it as maybe more of theirs.
Mm-hmm. Make it their board.
Make it their board. I'm going to add a little highlight over here. A little too much brown on my brush, so rinse it out. This isn't pure white. And a little bit lighter down here. We'll save the last little bits of the pure white for the final highlights on the board, but you just want to get that basis in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a lot. Let's dry this and come back. So we're going to continue to put the layers and constructs into this painting that are going to build it up. I'm going to change my water out right now to clean water. That's always helpful as you go to consistently change your water. And I'm going to take a little bit of my brown and some of my black and actually start my figure in this range. A little bit of brown, a little bit of black over here. And kind of go through a very similar thing that I had before about what I'm painting.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of looking at like what do I see here? Where is the arm? Where is it going? Where are the joints? I'm like, there's a little bit of a joint here coming up to a neck. I'll just build that up. You can use the traceable if this isn't something that you're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. You don't have to know how to do this right now for this painting. Going to bring a little line down to say to the elbow. And a little bit one off here for the hand. When I have that, it'll let me come up to my other joint across the back here and go elbow, hand. So right now it just looks like a weird spinny wheelie thing. It is really hard to believe that when you're starting with the weird spinny wheelie thing, that anything is going to come out of anything at this stage. I mean, I'm telling you, it just requires a lot of belief.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot. But like the flowers, and we did this kind of in that very mellow way. What did we do with the flowers? We painted their shape, not their individual petals.
Right.
The reason we were doing that is so that we could introduce this concept of painting something's shape, but not necessarily its individual parts in the way that we tend to think of it early in our painting. To add this. So like what I'm doing is I just painting his shape. The shape that his body makes on this board is what I paint. Not, I don't know, like the way to explain it, but I do know the way to explain it. It's not, I'm not painting a guy, I'm painting a shape of a man. Right. So if his foot is slightly off board here, I just want to just pay attention to where things are and how I'm going to represent them. It works surprisingly well.
Just to go for the shapes? Just
to go for the shape, because what can happen is you can get into a figure painting and your mind can just mess with you and be like, start telling you all the things like, you know, this is what I want you to paint, and not let your brain see what it actually sees. So, as a surfer, he's pretty muscular, and I do want to get some of that in here.
Okay.
Because paddling out is not a small event.
We're standing on that thing.
No, getting up, popping up, and standing on it. All of these are actually activities that take a lot of strength. We had a neighbor that was a woman's world champion kind of surfer. And she was strong. Like sailor strong. You know what I mean?
I do.
She wasn't gym strong. She was sailor strong. Like, I can just pull this shark out of the sea with my will in my hands. Yeah. When we come to the hands, you know, we've just got to remember that hands are a paddle. And I've talked about this a lot. So I will probably do my hands as a paddle, and I will probably do them as with my monogram liner. Right. But that's really the shape of the dude that I have here.
He looks like, it actually looks like a little shadow guy standing on a board.
He looks like a little shadow guy standing on a board. Now there's so many brushes I can do. I've got all these little brushes that I'm going to do my wave with, and I have to decide what I want to start painting them in. And I'm going to start with my hog, and that's because I want a rough, dry brush for my waves. It's going to help me do a good job. If it doesn't give me the detail I need, I can always switch to my round or my cat's tongue. But we're going to start here, and we can begin to look at the top of the wave. So one of the things that I see here is a little bit of teal or turquoise buried towards the green up here at the top of this wave. Even if I get a little yellow in it, it's still towards that green in the top of the wave here. It's only going to be pulled out from the background, really honestly, by the seafoam. That's when we'll see it as separate from the background in value, is with the seafoam. And then here, underneath here, this part of the wave definitely has some shadow.
Is that the shark?
Well, it could be, actually. If you were looking for a shark in a wave like this, you would look along these thin areas. You would distinctly, I've seen this, you would just, not to mess with John, but I've distinctly seen the dolphin or shark swim through the like horizontally along the wave as it moves forward, which is really kind of like if you think about what the animal's doing, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But it travels along and it'll go across here as the wave is rolling forward, and you will see it stay in the water though. That doesn't probably make John feel very comforted, but
Oh, I already knew all this stuff. I'm like,
he says he did.
I have seen it. Like,
You've watched some YouTube videos and gotten all excited about it.
I'm not excited about it. I'm just
I'm gonna
aware.
grab a little white and some yellow into my brush. This is the number 6 hog bristle, right? So this is just a number 6 round hog bristle brush. The words you're looking for when you're trying to buy a hog brush, because you can't always get every brand that I have, is you want to look for the words chunking and you want to look for the words interlocked. You know, and just remember that it's not, it's get good tools, but the magic of the painting is not in the brush. It is in you. You know, the brush doesn't do the painting for you. Just kind of pull some of the shape of the wave here. And then where it's got a blend down there, I'm going to wipe out with a towel. And these two are both sort of wet, so I can kind of get them there. And if I can come back here, I can make a little transition and have some nice time transitioning these two. A little bit of light value there. This is just us painting the values. Painting the value. It's fun to do. And what's wild is even up here, it gets even like lighter. It's almost to the white because the foam, which is kind of wonderful. And then again, really over here, I love this part of it. You can see that I do really rather enjoy what I'm doing. And then where I've got to get it kind of darker into the turquoise, I'm going to come here. And there's a bit of a shadow that's distinctly cast on the surface of the waves. That's sort of an interesting thing. And one of the things that will help you create a wave that is perhaps more realistic. I'll go get some green into that. There's maybe more of a green cast to that shadow. What I painted. I'm going to rinse out to a wet brush. I'm going to wipe it off on my towel. And I'm going to come here and softly sort of blend this in a bit. Maybe a little bit here. And you can always get your ultramarine blue and your dot ox purple. Do an interesting little sea bit. They do, though. They do an interesting little sea bit. And that's why in mermaid stuff, you will see purples. I wondered, why is there purple in mermaid stuff? Because sometimes it feels like there is this cast to the water. Look at us go. Painting the wave. And because of the transparent way we're doing this, like some of the canvas is showing through underneath.
Yeah.
And it really does create some lovely dimensionality. And I can come back into this purple right here and deepen this shadow. See what I'm doing?
Yep. Deepen the shadow.
And we haven't even put the lacing of the foam on here. Boy, when that gets on here, it's just going to be a wave in about 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? Because we won't really see this hard transition here. There's going to be seafoam all through here. We can soften it a bit if we want to. And last touch, we could come along and maybe on the top edge of the board, take a little bit of our yellow and white. Just a little bit of highlight there. Back into the other color. Fun.
Yeah.
All right. That was a lot to take in. When we come back, we're going to put some highlights on our figure who should be dry at this point. Now, our dude needs some fingers. He does. He needs some fingers. So I'm going to take my number 1 monogram liner in my black and brown paint, and I'm going to just kind of put in the basis of, the little bit of his hand that I can see. So I'll pull a little thumb out. This is what's hard for new artists in here, is this finger thing. Right? You're like, man, fingers are never fun. And they can have an element of being a challenge for sure. That's why I like to do the paddle. We actually did in the patron group, and this was only in the group, we did a week of hands just to work on it, because every once in a while you should just do hands. I know, doesn't sound fun, but you should if you're trying to learn how to paint and you want to paint figures.
Yeah. At
some point in your painting journey, you're going to be doing some hands. Whoops, I moved that finger too far out. It's too far out. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my black paint and I'm going to erase those. And I could do that because the paint underneath was dry.
That's his panic hands.
Mm-hmm.
Panicking.
No, that fingers are splayed like that because that's actually for balance. Not to be all.
I'm sure they are.
From San Diego on you. From the Diego, man.
I totally believe it. I know nothing about surfing except that you're looking a lot like a seal, where things like to eat seals.
Only from underneath.
Which is the only view that matters.
Well, yeah. And again, this is going to look a little awkward, right? Initially.
Yeah.
The great one about this hand is it's kind of in foam, so you've just got to generally get it.
Yeah.
This one is in the light, so you kind of got to get it. That's the only problem about this one. The middle finger is your longest finger. The pinky is your shortest outside of the thumb, but in this front set of phalanges.
Yeah.
That's how you want to do it. There we go. So I always think about the arc. I've got a pin. You know what? I'll put it on the webpage. So if you check the webpage, I've got a whole infographic to explain to you how to draw hands and about what you have to pay attention to. And it did really well on Pinterest. People were like, yeah, that's what I was looking for. I was like, okay, I should probably do a video about that eventually. And then never did. But it's a really useful infographic, and it will help you kind of understand about the curve and common mistakes that you would make. I'm going to come here and I'm going to start highlighting him. Now, his base skin tone, because he's tan, I'm going to start out with an orange.
Okay.
No puns intended, but that's just what it is. Just a little orange. My dad tanned, I never did.
Yeah.
So it was always sort of a challenge for me. I'm going to come here and add some highlight to the shoulder. Because he and my mom both bronzed easily in the sun. And this is back in the 80s when we were like, it was healthy to have a suntan. I remember people saying that. You don't look healthy because you didn't have a tan. And people would go, you're so pasty. You're so pasty. And I'd be like, but I'm not burned.
No.
I didn't know that there was a health concern. I just knew burning hurt. And that was my set point with the sun. The sun and I did not do all I could do is darken my freckles. That's all I could do. That is 100% of my accomplishment in the sun was like, oh, look, I've darkened all my freckles. Because they were the only thing that could deepen. I'm adding these highlights on the outer edge of his muscles.
Lots of muscles in there.
Yeah, there are. And make sure that it's on his hand, kind of coming through halfway. And I may even kind of come through and start to talk a bit about on the fingers where there is some highlights, like on the thumb. And it will be wild to you as you paint. I'm going to get some white into this one right here. How, as you come forward and you add these like little layers of highlights.
Yeah.
That a surfing figure is born.
He emerges.
He will. He'll emerge. We're going to touch the little highlights of him. So not every finger is in highlight.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I had black and brown, I'm going to come back with just some brown now and kind of take that more into the brown than the black. And the reason I had initially done that is so that we had good deep value, because brown tends to be very transparent.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
And that is not as fun as it could be. I don't know how it would be fun at all, but it just isn't as much as you would think.
Whatever you think it is, it's less.
It's less. It's distinctly and totally less.
Sort of like however safe you think you are in the water, you're not.
You are just obsessed.
Not obsessed.
You're
Aware.
just obsessed.
So I think that, like,
I'm here and add some little shadow bits that I know.
Shark Week
out. One thing that
2022.
might help me see my figure is to put in the shorts. Let's take a little bit of our red and come around his side and along his little bum. Little red stripe. His little red racing stripe. Dude, I'm catching the curl, man. I'm going to grab a little bit of my white and my green together, and they make kind of a mint, which is distinct.
You know, you never meet the Cockney surfer.
I would not know if that's true or not.
That'd be great. Like, you're out there and, like, can't even do it. But, like,
were you going to try to do a Cockney accent?
No, I can't. But I can't even imagine that. Like, accents that don't go with the activity. I would think that, I don't know if there are, maybe there is. Maybe there's a bunch of some, like, you got there at the beaches of England and there's some.
I would think that there would have to be, but because where there is a shore, there are surfers.
It's just cold there.
I didn't say the water was temperate. So by tucking in little bits of the shorts, you can start to see the figure. I'm going to add white to areas of the knee and things that are going to be highlighted. A little bit in my orange. Let's come in and highlight the inside of the knee. And this is really what you do. Yep. You're just going to paint the little bits that you can see and then work out the bits that you can't. So if there's like, he's got a little kind of light on his toes, then I'm going to paint his little toes. And you just try to catch as much and go a little red where I need to go red as you can as you go. So it's orange, brown, when I need to lighten the skin, more yellow and more white. And it's a hard twist. It's definitely, you're definitely going to be working maybe a little harder than you used to for the figure. You can just paint the wave too, just so you know that that's totally okay. To just be like, yeah, this no. A little more yellow in there. So like right across his back, there's this fabulous sort of highlight of twist of muscle. So I want to catch that. Coming up the neck. I'm going to just try to capture any place that I see. Some of those muscles.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily totally easy. That's not what it is. It's just doable. And if you have a hard time, understand this. It's hard. This is probably the hardest figure I've ever done on the channel.
You think so?
Oh, I'm sure so.
Because of the muscles?
Because of the muscles, because of the perspective, because of his skin tone. Everything about him makes him harder. I'm going to get a little of my black on here. Everything. Everything about it makes it harder.
Yeah.
Little highlight on his little calf right there. Little highlight on the outside of the foot. Little highlight on the outside of that muscle. Just keep trying to find the highlights and the shadows of what's going on. And then you get back into the oranges and come down this arm. And back into the brown on the front. So you're going to be playing the shadows and the highlights. The little shadow on that muscle there. It's in twist.
Yep.
It's doing a thing. Try to capture which ones you see in twist. And be grateful that most of his hand is under the water. Just be grateful. Doesn't mean you don't have to paint it, though. And continue to be. I want to highlight this hand a bit. Surprisingly, a hand, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Maybe a little more red. Got to get a shadow going under that. There's this kind of shoulder muscle gets a shadow going.
It's really interesting how you're just layering together the skin tones to build muscles.
That's all we can do. A little bit right there because you see a little of his skin. Now, his head's an interesting bit. Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to take a little of my brown and black while I'm at it. And start the deep shadow of hair. I'm going to go into a light yellow orange here. Look off a little bit of hair there because, it would.
Yeah.
It would definitely be like flying off. A little more red here. The thing I got to watch for when I'm painting, right, is the water drop that hides on the brush that wants to come down.
Oh, yeah. You talked about that in a couple
and get me.
episodes.
It wants to. I can't let it. Cannot let it. And I'm just trying to make sure that we've got good highlights. So I'm just going to mess with this until I'm happy with the general implication of the figure. Again, the yellow over here, and you notice I don't rinse out my brush like a ton.
Yeah.
Need to move this over a bit. Shadow. And notice that I moved it over.
Yeah.
Moving the paint. That's a thing that you can do. I get a little blue on my brush here. Blue and white. Single enough. Ultramarine blue. And some white. Too dark.
Oh.
Sometimes it'll be just too dark. I've got to come back and
Touch up the skin tones.
yeah. But it's the start of it, so sometimes I don't panic. I'm like, I'm just getting going. And I know it's going to take me a few back and forths to get it where I want it to be. Get a little bit of highlight here and come again to my toes. Interestingly enough, to my knee. Again to that calf and foot. And be grateful again that there is so much sea splatter everywhere.
Lots of sea spray.
Lots of sea spray.
Well, you're in the ocean, so that's
where it would be.
Yeah.
A little bit of our dark shadow here.
Yeah.
There we go.
Wow, he really is just coming into the sun.
He just comes into the sun when he comes into the sun. I'm going to take a little of my white, some of my yellow, a little brown. A little bit of highlight on his hair.
Wow.
Just little highlights here and there. Not an easy thing to do.
No, not at all.
But now you know what's involved.
That's really great.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. That's good enough, especially for where we're going. I mean, look at this, kind of this way. I would say that the musculature that I'm not sure of, like completely thrilled with, is the one across this part of his back here. Not completely thrilled with that, and that's not really that surprising.
Why is that?
It's a really difficult twist to the back.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know there's something else I wasn't understanding about this.
No, it's just a really difficult twist to the back.
I don't paint a lot of people or draw them
Or draw them.
or anything really with people.
If I need to kind of shave parts of him out, I can just come back and put the ocean in. Right? And that will help. Maybe like take something like a shoulder down. And again, super grateful for the sea spray. I may have to do a whole run of these.
Mm-hmm.
No, just for myself.
Oh, I like little surfer dudes.
Whenever I run into something that I don't just easily paint, then what I do is I paint a lot of it until it's easy. It's just what I do. So like, because I worked a little bit to get here, I would look at this and go, all right. And then I would get into my sketchbook and just paint or draw a lot of twisted figures until I was happy with it.
Yeah.
And that's really all you can do in art. You know, is look at where you're at and go, what do I need to do to get And again, we know we're going to have a lot of sea spray over him, so. Blessed the sea spray. All right, let's call this a step because that was a lot. If you're doing the surfer and you're here, like one thing you should know, like This is a difficult body position. This is a very difficult body position. And anytime that things are not positioned to you where you can really identify major body structures, it is even harder to paint. And all you can do is rely on your shadows and your highlights to really get you through.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that our brain tends to finish figures. But if you're struggling with that, know that that's completely normal and it's okay. And even I'm going to spend some time in my sketchbook, doing overhead twisted views just to make sure that I have that architecture of the human body down. So it comes even easier to me in the future. And that's what I highly recommend that you do. So now I've had a minute to look at him and I want to get into the wave. I do want to do that before I get totally into the wave. I want to take a little white and yellow over to my green and create a very, very light color that I put on the edge of the short here. And that's just because he has such strong highlights on him and the shorts would have those too and I didn't get those in. Now we're going to look at our wave again and ascertain what we need to do. Let's get our chalk pencil out. And I want to talk to you a little bit about Seafoam, the perspective of the wave, and what you see going on. So up front here in the foam is everything is kind of in an ellipse. You do sometimes get perfectly round circles in Seafoam.
Yeah.
But generally it's pulled out of shape by the energy of the wave. All right. So if it's in the flat water, right, it could be any of these little runs of shapes. But then as it comes up, right, it would be more like pulled into this direction as it comes up, elongating this and pulling this in. I know that we've got, I think I've got to put a line of deep shadow, actually, interestingly enough, right here.
Uh-huh.
Because there's Seafoam that I've got to deal with that comes up like this. And that is about the board having come out of the water. And then there's an arc coming behind him and another arc coming behind him. This wave splashes forward a touch. I do want to leave some of my Seafoam in it. It's going to come up a lot over him. Curls down here. Sometimes just drawing the path of the water really helps you get these complicated wave shapes. So if I'm like, oh, I know I've got a lot of complicated water and foam happening here going on, then you'll have an easier time getting that representation. Here, we see the foam kind of make these little openings. There will be some circles. There just won't be the common space.
Mm-hmm.
And there won't be always big open areas to the ocean below. Sometimes it's just solid foam. That's why sometimes I'm like, hey, draw a little of the foam. Draw a little of it. Because when you draw it, it will help you create a wave surface that feels more authentic.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we kind of have a sense of where that's going. I'm going to take my Cambridge number 6 round and I'm going to start putting in some of these wave details. First, let's talk about foam. I'm going to take a little of my ultramarine and the ox purple.
The Seafoam.
To start my Seafoam. A Seafoam. Seafoam. And we want to make sure that we get a really light kind of off-white. And again, I'm going to come back and put some of the green in, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I can also leave some of these little spots maybe a little bit opened. is step one, the only step, but it is an involved one.
Mm-hmm. Seafoam has to be in there. It's where all the little unicorns are and the sharks hide.
I'm just wiggling the brush up and down and really trying to think about how is this constructed? Why is it like this? Sometimes if you can think about why is it like this, how would it be? It can really help you understand the choices that you're making. As an artist, I come here and I know I've got a bit of a splash where I know it's going to be perhaps darker. I can add more blue and purple to where I know I'm going to have some splash coming up.
Yep.
There's absolutely no reason not to. And I'll have to add a darker value through here. Just be present. You've got it.
This surfer was really impressive.
Huh?
It's really impressive. This little surfer dude.
You like the little surfer dude?
Yeah.
He's saying cowbunga dude. He eats pizza. He was a turtle. I'm tapping my brush up and down. I'm engaging and releasing the canvas and allowing the brush to create some very random splatter patterns. If I lose the random, I've got to come back and put it back in.
Yeah.
That's just a thing to think about. There's a couple more thicker areas of this. And then it's going to go into one that we do with our detail brush where the splatter is really detailed.
Yeah.
But right now, let's just enjoy this right here. And this is just the beginning of the seafoam. We're just starting to paint in
Just the beginning.
action. Gauge and release the brush even as you're making the random patterns.
Mm-hmm.
It will be hard if you worked very hard to get a certain part of him. Paint over it, I understand, but it is necessary.
It is necessary.
Brush that forward where the wave is rolling forward and then pull that down. And again, we're going to be taking where this is in shadow. I've added a little more purple and blue. Because some of the foam is in shadow, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because he would have cast a shadow on it. It's an important thing to think about. Things to think about as you're painting it. Sometimes if you understand the why, it helps you with the how.
That's true.
Not always, but it can. And we're not doing all of our detail work. We're just putting in some of the little work coming forward. And we're going to come back through with our detail number 4 round. Adding some detail into some of this. But we got to get the layers in.
Yeah. And these ocean layers, what do you call it? The lacing?
Yeah, the lacing of the foam. The lacing of the wave.
That's quite nice.
Okay. Let's just say that that's the start. Let's get it to there. And then we're going to come back with our more values and our number 4 round. We're going to add some detailing. And we'll probably break the detailing down in a few steps before we even splatter because there's a lot to do, but you can do it. Take a deep breath. Even if you're like, man, I don't know if this is good or not. I just want to ask you something. Is it fun? If you can keep the painting fun, try to throw away, is it good enough or not? Because of course you're good enough. Of course your painting is good enough. You're learning how to do it. If you understand 2 things you didn't know at the beginning of the painting, you have absolutely already won. And it's important to remember that a lot of times the painting doesn't come together until like the last third when those final layers come in. So let's go forward a little bit longer with our number 6 Cambridge, our hog brush, because we want to just do a little more dry brushing. I'm going to take my brush and get a little ultramarine and docks in it. Again, get that cool off white. And I'm going to roughly go over the surface of the canvas. I'm letting a lot of what's underneath show through. But I'm creating this sort of rough, dry brush surface with the base Seafoam color. I'm also going to put some of this brighter version of it perhaps here as well.
Huh.
Just for the moment. We have some stuff to do. So that's a little more even and viewable. Then I'm going to switch to my number 4 round. And I'm going to grab my phthalo blue and turquoise and create some openings in the Seafoam in this way.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of ways to do this. It is fun, in my opinion, to get to experiment with all the ways that we can paint subjects in a painting. Like if I know that this needs to be darker here, I can come through and a little ultramarine and make it darker there where the board cuts a path through the way.
Cutting
I can come in here and show the little openings in the frothy foam. So there's foam that gets clumped together in that lace formation, and then you also get kind of a frothing foam. So just the next time you're at the beach, the next time you're anywhere, just observe. That's what you've got to do as an artist. Is you've got to observe. You can take classes like this with me, and I love it because it's always so nice to see you guys. You guys do so good, and you are doing so good. But whether you're an adult person who's learning how to do art for the first time, or an artist returning to your craft and you just want to catch up on techniques, whatever brought you here today, what I'd like you to leave with is observation. Get in the habit of observing the things that you see around you, their forms, their shape, how they relate to each other, how light or dark something is, whatever it is, just observe it.
Huh.
Because that's going to be how you get past the tutorials, right?
It's
Being
true.
able to see the world and how you would draw it. And then, also having no fear. If something is like, man, I got to work at this, then realize that you've got something to work on.
Yeah.
That's awesome in art. It's not like, when you realize you can't do a sit up and then you're like, oh my gosh, I have to do 10,000 sit ups. That is terrible news, right? I
Unless
get
you like
that
doing
news.
sit-ups.
Uh-huh.
Unless you like doing sit-ups.
Unless you really like doing sit ups, which I guess is great news. But I like painting and I don't like doing sit ups. So when I find that I've got to work on figures in this weird perspective, or I've got to work on cars, or I've got to work on whatever it is that maybe doesn't come as naturally, don't worry about that. Isn't this cool how this dark color comes in and creates the foam in reverse?
It really is.
Just my favorite. So cool. And we're not really getting that way down in the details. We're still painting pretty loosely, right? We could paint a lot more controlled than this. We could paint a lot of different ways.
A lot of ways you could paint.
And if you're still here in this video and you're still having a good time, I want to thank you for your time. These paintings are a big investment in resources, in your time. And when you choose to spend that with me, I do appreciate it. I do recognize you have choice. And the support that you guys give me is always just really amazing and humbling.
I love seeing everybody's painting and, it's really nice
Exciting,
to be able to.
Right?
Yeah, I love seeing how everyone progresses. Part of my favorite thing.
Fun, right? We make these little strange. These shapes that come back in.
Yeah. The translucency.
It does. It creates that illusion, doesn't it?
Yep.
Wonderful illusion of something being see-through. If you take the time to do it, you will not be sorry. Just painting through. And then there's, even in this, there is white highlights and other types of highlights.
Uh-huh.
So you've got choice. You've got opportunity.
You have options.
You have so many options. In any painting, in any given moment, you have so many options. Even in the Seafoam, when I put it in, I can come back and put back little holes in it. Right? And we're so early on the Seafoam. This is an early days Seafoam moment. I'm going to turn this just so I can do this here with a little bit of greater ease. Just for my body posture, my back. Remember, you've got to pay attention to how you're sitting and how you're breathing. If you're really new to painting and you haven't heard that, please let me share that with you. You can tweak your neck or your shoulders or any part of your body because you get into these long, extended painting marathons. Sometimes you will get in a bad posture and hold it for a long time. So really try to listen to your body as you work. Are you hydrated? Do you need something? Does your body need something for its comfort? It's okay to pay attention to those things. Putting the holes back in the Seafoam is a powerful thing.
Making it sort of translucent again.
Yeah. Well, and opening up the lace, right? It's not such a big thing. I'm going to come and put some fluid paint out now just to improve the flow of some of the stuff. I'm going to load up. I'm going to let it get into some of the purple, but it's going to be a lot lighter.
Okay.
And we're going to create elements of the seafoam that are maybe also highlighted. So even within these little moments of lacing, see, the seafoam has some highlights.
Yeah.
And that will also happen. It is lighter than the foam it's on, but it's not pure white yet. You would want to save that for like the water that's really sparkling.
Mm-hmm.
And come here and along the surface. Talk about how this is more shaped, perhaps. So it's not a pure white.
You save that pure white.
Kind of last. We want to save that for kind of the last minute where we're. And we will balance between the brushes.
Uh-huh.
The roughness of the hog and the point of the number 4. Like this area will still need some hog. Like if I come back through there, right here.
Yep.
And get a lighter value.
Start adding some of those frothier highlights.
Yeah. Some froth. But you'll still want to come in and play it. So keep both those brushes there, right? Is what I'm saying. Keep them both there. Be aware of both of them. They're both going to be in your toolkit. Taking my fluid paint and adding it to that, and then I will make sure that I also talk about this type of foam.
Wow. That sea lace is really coming in.
Sea lace.
Isn't that what it is?
Well, I mean, that's what I call it. I don't know if that's what it is.
It's lace of the sea.
Lace of the sea. Does remind me of lace, though.
Shark skins have that on it.
Yeah.
So you can't see them. They're hiding in the surf.
Oh my gosh.
Well, they do.
You know how many shark emojis they've had to drop this video, John?
I don't know. Maybe we'll
not
count.
Even sorry. You're like, drop them. I don't care. I have to warn others. We're just making sure that this wave has some personality. Coming along here. And you can see I changed the directionality as things get pulled.
We'll never know how many lives I've saved by talking about sharks.
We would not.
See, it's a preventative thing. You can't tell. Because, see, now people aren't going to go in there. They will avoid those risks.
I don't know that you've caused anyone to avoid any risks. I just think that you've talked a lot about sharks.
I could have saved thousands of people's lives.
Let's hope that we had thousands of people watch the video that you could save their lives. Let's hope that. Now, I want to add some more detailing into my foam. I have started to think about my foam. I'm going to grab my hog brush. And again, it's engaging up and down.
I have an idea.
Hmm.
See, for everyone who's live, I've saved because of the talk about a shark, throw up a shark emoji.
No, because that
See, it's
game
a
was
perfect way.
earlier and the game had different rules.
No, it's a perfectly good way of determining this.
No, you can't cheat.
It's not
This isn't
cheating.
cards. Cannot cheat. Actually, you don't even cheat at cards because you're not good enough at cards to cheat. That may seem salty to y'all, but it's well deserved based on 20 years of marriage. John's the only person I know that talks more smack when he's losing than when he's winning.
The comeback is glorious.
You think you're going to have a comeback in cards?
I don't know. Just, in general.
What cards? What game? Fish? Go fish? Does a go fish come back?
We could do go fish.
We would
Just
need
not
to.
go shark.
No go shark. Everyone's like, wow, they have card drama.
No. Not really.
Well, we don't anymore, but we did.
Eh.
We're just adding some more of that dimensionality, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's still a lot to do here. And the reason I'm turning my canvas and that you should is so that I'm not making brush strokes in all the same direction.
Yeah.
This is kind of fun now. I haven't even gotten into the really, really fun detailing work yet.
Yeah.
Just coming soon.
Oh.
All right, let's call this a step and then we'll come back and do some more lacing. All right, so we're going to take our number 4 round and we're going to begin to come out into the ocean out here.
Okay.
And start to create some thoughtful splash dynamic up here. Now we are going to splatter later to get that randomness and the small particulate, but even so, still got to get this.
Mm-hmm.
It's those patterns, even before you get the randomness in, that's going to bring it to that next level. Then we can make the fine mist as we see fit. Right now we're just trying to, and even right here, it's pretty good. It gets pretty good pretty fast.
Yeah. Wow, that's really cool.
It's got to be done. It's a splashy job. Somebody's got to do it. Might as well be you.
Yep. Might as well be you.
Seriously, might as well be you. And again, this is a very splashy painting, which is why I didn't make a lot of details where I knew we were going to have splashes covering it.
Yeah.
So, nothing like doing a whole bunch of work on some part of the painting and then discovering, oh, none of this matters. Look at that little highlighting and that little splashy world coming through. Water is amazing.
Yeah.
And you can see how the play against the bristle brush, the sharp edges of the number 4 round, these all make a world that feels surftacular.
Yeah. I like how the splash gets that highlight. And you do that by keeping very random strokes, huh?
I have to really wander along and so the edges of the water will kind of create these ripples or ruffles.
Uh-huh.
And so I try to duplicate that in the brushstroke. Now, some of him, I want to do a lot of this behind him.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to do a resist on him when I do the final splatter because I want to control how the splash is around him. Because I don't want to take him out entirely.
Right.
I need to make it look like the splash goes behind, which is why I'm hand splashing now before I do the freeform splash. These things all take a minute. And it's when they all come together that it's like, it really feels like what it is.
Yeah.
Do this big, and big canvas, it's really quite something.
I love all the little. It really makes it look like I just said motion. That highlight captures the motion.
It does. The motion of the moment. And there is motion in the moment. And that is super important to be present to. And all of your waves should have it.
Yeah.
No matter how it's crashed, no matter where it's splashing up, it should have this.
Little extra highlight.
It just pulls it all together.
It really does. It just makes it all come alive.
I think the reason that wave paintings get so overwhelming for everybody is there's a lot happening in them.
It can be, yeah.
And so this is a bit of a journey. I have a little sheeting of water. I just kind of connect those little lines.
That just sort of draws that edge.
Which the water would be giving you.
Yeah.
In that moment. And again, these are just for the articulate little bits of stuff that are happening. You could sponge out the base Seafoam as well to a fantastic effect. In fact, sea sponges almost give you perfect Seafoam foaming.
Yeah.
I don't know like how they do it. Like it's like they're from the ocean, so they make the ocean.
Put a little bit over the top of him creates that layer, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And it's an important thing because he would have a splash or two up on his leg.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we did some work on his foot, and that is upsetting, but we've got to put him in. And then we'll put a little resist over him. So when we go splatter, he's still not substantively changed.
Right. Few more of those there. Are you using pure white?
It's a little bit tinted with the paint underneath it, so it's not as pure as it could be. It's kind of a little off white. But for the purposes of the painting, it's pretty light.
Pretty close.
A little bit of lines there. A little lacing and ruffles of the wave
Yeah.
have their moment. It'll be really important to dry this well before we do the next part, just so that when we put the resist over him, it feels fairly authentic. That looks pretty good. Let's call that a spot.
Okay.
Let's call that a stage. We're in a stage.
We're
going to dry this thoroughly and come back, and then we're going to mist. So I want to do some misting around him, and I want to leave some of him protected from that. So I'm going to take a crumpled up paper towel, and the crumpling gives it enough of random edges where you won't have a stencil effect.
Okay.
Because you don't want a stencil effect. And I may come out there just a little bit. And remember, wherever you need more mist, you can always come back with it. You're just protecting him for right now. And he doesn't have to be perfectly protected, even though I'm being quite fussy here. And I may tape these two little things together. Sometimes, if I want to resist to be a certain shape, I'll just take a little bit of tape. And I'll be like, you stick to you. So, I'll get it, where I kind of want it. But one thing won't stay there. And then I'll be like, no, now you are not there. You didn't listen to me. But now you did. Just a little bit of it, Watch me struggle with my paper towel. It's a whole lesson. Badly. All right. So I'm going to put out a little more of my fluid paint. And I will grab my splatter tool. You could use a toothbrush. You could watch my video on how to splatter. You could skip splattering and just hand dot out all the splatters.
Yep.
All of that is okay. I'm going to come right here, and I'm going to add some of these little particulate splatters.
Ooh.
And I'm going to add some of those little particulate splatters. These are the ones that come around him and then make it that fine splash. So you can see how the resist really helped me. And isn't unnoticeable because you would have this weird corridor because that's where he cut the water. So that's why I shaped it the way that I did. When you have that splattered, you can come back and detail it in any way you want. But guess what? We get to sign now.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to take my number 1 monogram liner. Don't let anything stop you from what you're doing in your art goals. Remember, the goal of the painting is not for you to be a perfect artist. The goal of the painting is for you to have a really good time being creative and enjoying your imaginative self. That really is the goal. So keep that in mind and don't be hard on yourself. Don't be particular, especially when you're taking on big projects. The thing about growth in art is you've got to color in the margins where you're not entirely comfortable. And that means that you have to be okay with the fact that maybe things don't fall together in the way that they do when you're really familiar with the subject. And all you need to take away from that is, I should practice this more so that you get fewer and fewer things for which you are in the margins. That's how you grow no matter where you're at in your art. You just color in the margins where you're not comfortable. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. Whether you came for the 30 paintings that are part of the Acrylic April program or whether you came because you just wanted to paint a surfer, I really appreciated your time. John, really appreciated your time. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. And I want to see you at an easel real soon. Bye-bye.